Well, it's another week to wrap up what the Canucks are up to. And Randip, the story is much the same. The State of the Union on the Vancouver Canucks, as it was called by Jim Benning earlier today. His conversation with owner Francesco Aquilini. Where do the Canucks go from here is the question everybody's asking.
Dan, the State of the Union, it's in shambles right now. And on the ice, it's not looking good. In the media, it's not looking good. You had fans that were booing the team, coming out with various chants throughout the game. So it's getting pretty bad in Vancouver. Where do you go? As of right now with the organization, what Jim Benning has said, it's on the players to get better. It's on the coaching staff to correct this. So as of right now, which I find shocking, it's a holding pattern until the next game. Yet again, we're kind of watching this team and headed where they're, seeing where they're headed. But to me, it's a very baffling situation in Vancouver because nothing is going right now.
Here's the problem with the Canucks and the state of the union, the state of the franchise, Randip. The players are not performing at a level that is representative of their talent. Say what you will about Jim Benning. There's more talent on this team than they are showing right now. They're not a 60-point team in the National Hockey League. They shouldn't be the historically worst penalty kill in NHL history. Like, I don't believe those things equate to the group that's on paper with this roster. The coaching staff, they haven't gotten the most out of this roster. They haven't been able to figure out the mix and the chemistry to get it going. That's going on even into last year. Jim Benning, he's made a litany of mistakes going back to when he first started with this team. There is plenty of examples where he pushed the let's go for it button a little too quickly, and now you have a roster that he's all in with, has spent his last 2 first-round draft picks. There's no prospect pool to speak of, and you are basement of the league, only above really the Arizona Coyotes. It's not great. And ownership has bought into this for going on 7+ years. And I'm trying to figure out why that is. Everybody's trying to figure out why that is. Why is Jim Benning one of the most tenured general managers in the National Hockey League when he hasn't gotten results? And this is, as they all say, it's a results-based business. What results have the Canucks had? One mini playoff run in the COVID year. Other than that, they had the Mirage year a few years ago, the first year of Willie Desjardins. That was one and done. It's been terrible in every other year. How can that be acceptable at any rate? But it has been, and that's why you feel the tension of the fan base really boiling over.
The ownership and, you look at the organization, they bought into that bubble experience where they took Vegas to 7 games, where they had a shot. But here's the problem. Everything you said about Jim Benning is correct. There hasn't been success. It has been a failure. There have been a number of mistakes. There's been some good things in developing talent and all that. But it has been, overall, it hasn't moved. It's been stagnant. But here's the issue. You are 17 games into the season, and you feel as though, if you're the organization, this is what we get from Jim Benning's comments, this is what we get clearly from ownership's mandate, that they still have a chance to turn this around. And if that is your mandate, if that is your philosophy in the here and now, what can you do is the question. I watched that team. The play, special teams is god-awful right now. Like, it is terrible. 5-on-5, we can talk about, the process being better, and they play better than the Avalanche 5-on-5. But my question is, did they win? Did they get points? Did they show a spine, which is something that this team has not been able to show the last 4 games, where when something happens in a game, when you have a fight or flight moment in a game, what do? Do they fight or they flight? They've been crumbling over the last 4 to 5 games, and it's been bad. And we saw that against Colorado as well. Terrible penalties, bad penalty kill, and it happened yet again. So if you feel as though you can salvage the season, what is that move? I understand the criticism of Jim Benning, but in the here and now, regime change is not happening 17 games into a season. The obvious answer is you're looking at the coach, because we can blame the players all we want, and they deserve the blame. But if you're talking about coaching up those players and improving special teams, it's on the players, but it's also on coaching. They have a penalty kill that's functioning at 60.3 right now. 60.3. The players have been underachieving mightily, and they're getting paid a lot of money to do so, but the coaching is not immune to this. The coaching is where the target is going to go next year. And Jim Benning, specifically in that press conference, when he was asked about, is Travis Green's job safe? He didn't come out with a yes or a no. That was a telling moment.
It really was. And he was asked if Travis is safe, and he was non-committal, essentially, in his assessment. And look, nobody should be safe. Jim Benning himself, when asked about his position, just diverted to ownership. And ownership has always been supportive of this management group, going back to the start of the season when Francesco Aquilini joined us on the People's Show just before the season opener for the Vancouver Canucks. And diss me was the big thought then, the big words then. Don't diss Jim, diss me. I'm the one that's putting this thing all together. And it's gone beyond that because the results have not been there, as we spoke about. And you're right, changing Jim or changing the general manager, setting a new vision for the team from a management perspective, a hockey ops perspective, does that change anything in the short term? Does that save your season necessarily? No, it doesn't. That usually comes down to, or the thought has been, a coach can make that sort of a change. And I think there's things Travis Green obviously needs to figure out. The special teams is number one, but there's also, a talent issue and a mix issue with this team to certain levels. Like even at the peak of their talent, maybe they are good enough to get into the top three of the Pacific, but will they be, up there with Vegas and Edmonton? Probably not. And that's where we're at right now with this team. It's a bit of talent, it's a bit of coaching, it's a bit of direction. All of these things apply to a team that 10 years ago was at the forefront of the National Hockey League in how to, set your players up for success, giving them every resource possible to get to the best version of themselves. And now players come to Vancouver and they're worse than the players they were before they got here. That is a situation you absolutely have to figure out where they've gone wrong and how they fix it.
Yeah, organizational introspection is required here for the Canucks. That's the long-term thing that I think Francesco Aquilini, Jim Benning, if he's still involved beyond the season, or whoever's running the organization from a hockey ops perspective, needs to look at, because that's a very good point. You have to figure out why the Canucks have dropped off as an organization so much. The other thing I would say, though, and we haven't mentioned specific names on this roster, but most teams in this league, if your stars are underachieving, you're not going anywhere. And the Vancouver Canucks with Elias Pettersson, he does not look like the Elias Pettersson from 2 years ago. He doesn't look like a player that is confident. He is trying to maybe do too much. He doesn't have that, short burst that we're talking about, where he's making moves and, keeping people guessing and all of that. So to me, Elias Pettersson's a part of that, and he's not the only one. The last number of games as well, Brock Besser has started to look a little off as well. He's looked very flat. So I think across the board, in the short term, your stars can save you. Your stars can save you from a bad penalty kill as long as they're producing. What's going on with the Canucks is everything. We're talking about special teams, star players, even their goaltending, which was amongst the best in the league to start off the year with Thatcher Demko. Even that is falling flat now, and you can't really blame Thatcher Demko. So to me, it's a bigger picture of, what are the Vancouver Canucks doing long-term here, and how do they right this long-term? But in the short term, if your stars are not producing, you're in a lot of trouble, and that's what's going on right now. And Jim Benning, mentioned in his press conference, we need our best players, our young players, to step up. The question I have is, did you maybe go all in too early with these guys? Did you maybe look at that bubble experience and say, hey, they're ready? But were they actually? And we're starting to see that right now. Maybe the answer is in front of us.
Well, you're almost starting to ask if that bubble experience was the worst thing to happen to the Vancouver Canucks, because they bought in maybe a little bit too much into what they saw there, and they've traded first-round picks left, right, and center now, and trying to get this team back into the playoffs now that fans are back. All of those things apply, and yeah, they have been too hasty in wanting to get back to the playoffs and get those playoff gates, as it would seem. No shortcuts has been the message, but you look through the years and the shortcuts have certainly been taken. So what are fans supposed to do other than voice their displeasure as to where this franchise is going? And it's not going to stop unless they go on a miraculous winning streak here, Randip, and somehow get themselves back into the playoff hunt, which, by the way, already less than 20 games into the season, they have a less than 10% chance probability of getting back into that playoff hunt. Unless there is some miraculous winning streak here, this isn't going to change. The tension with the fan base is not going away, and it's only going to, as Jim Benning kept saying today, wear on them, players, coaching, management, ownership, everybody, and the fan base. It's going to continue wearing on them until something changes. It's either wins or change. That's the only direction forward for the Vancouver Canucks.
And in the short term, to right that, my thoughts are there's one of two ways you can go. The Jim Benning and, is it time for him to go? That conversation will happen in Vancouver. You better believe it.
It's happening every day.
It's happening, but I don't think that's a move that you see 17 games into the season or 18 or 19. We'll see what happens with this team going forward, maybe in another 10 to 15 games. But what can you do right now if they don't start winning? You look at two directions. Travis Green and the coaching staff, or making a roster move to try to maybe change up the dynamic. If something's not working, potentially trying to maybe move one of those forwards off for another defenseman. You have to start looking at those types of decisions because, that's essentially, if you're trying to salvage this year, it's going to require something like that. Because otherwise, we see the standing. We see where this team is in November. Nobody. I predicted them to be fighting for a playoff spot, maybe that third spot or the wild card, third Pacific spot or the wild card. And even if you were low on the Vancouver Canucks, nobody thought they would be this bad. This is a train wreck.
It's a disaster so far this season. There's no real other way to look at it right now. Wins or change? What do you think happens next for the Vancouver Canucks? This has been the State of the Union for Canucks this week. Dan Riccio and Randip Janda. We do it every week on the Sportsnet YouTube channel, and you can listen to us every day on Sportsnet 650 Vancouver with the People Show 3 to 7, and also on all of your favorite podcatchers. Subscribe, leave a review, leave a comment as well. We respond to as many as we can, and we'll see you in the next video.